Throughout the preseason, NFL coaches do their best to keep their cards close to the chest, not letting us know what their strategy is going to be. But in week one, they're forced to show their cards. And now we have information on what some of these backfields may look like. Jeff Bell and I today, we are going to go through all 32 NFL backfields, talking about how the touches are split up, who you should be targeting, who you should be moving up and down in your rankings, and so much more. Jeff, you've been tracking this for a few years now, looking at utilization and usage in different NFL backfields. As we come out of week one of the 2025 season, do you have any overarching major takeaways?
The biggest thing, as you look at the landscape, I started doing this really for the 2023 season. And at the time, I like to break these backfields down into categories. I look at bell cow backfields. I look at committee backfields that have a lead back within that committee, or I look at just a straight full-blown committee. And the shift towards bell cow backfield usage has been stark. When I started doing this a couple of years ago, it was about 11 backfields that I was classifying as bell cow backfields. I'm up to 18 in week one. And that didn't even count the Bears. I would put the Bears in there as well from last night too. And so that would be 19 backfields across the league that are really have bell cow usage out of their running backs. And I think a handful of things have happened within that. I think that teams have gotten smarter about how to keep backs healthier, and they feel better about that. So they're willing to stack it on backs a little bit more. I think the other part of it is so many of these offenses are offshoots of the Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay offenses. And what we saw a couple of years ago when Christian McCaffrey came to the 49ers, previously they had been just this really screwy backfield, hot hand backfield that could rotate from week to week. They got Christian McCaffrey and it was on with him. And the Rams went an opposite approach, but did the same thing when they plugged Kyron Williams in. And Kyron Williams has just run with that job for the last couple of years. And Ben, Sean McVay has talked about how he doesn't want to rotate the back out because that allows the defense time to rotate. It tips the hand to the defense of what you're intending to do. And I think this plays into the more two tight end sets across the league because you're able to go multiple with two tight end sets. You keep your main running back that can handle passing downs or running downs in there as well. And it really trips defenses up.
Yeah, and I think that there was this like Belichickian way of handling backfields that really became popular like 15 years ago, where it's like we've got our pass blocker, we've got our pass catcher, we've got our goal line guy, we've got our between the tackles guy. But what happens is it just tips the hand. Like you're not hiding anything from the defense. Like when this running back comes on the field, you know exactly what's going to happen. So I think now we're kind of like we talk about it like it's very cyclical. The NFL kind of swinging back and forth, and where that was kind of the trendy, buzzy thing to do 10, 15 years ago. Now we're kind of in this age where having a running back who can do it all slightly above average might be more beneficial than having a bunch of guys that can do things well above average. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Now let's go through. And I want to start off with the bell cow running backs, the guys that you have deemed bell cows. After this, we'll get into the section of guys that you have deemed committees with a lead back, and then the true committee backfields that we are not going to want to talk about, but we have to talk about for fantasy purposes. But let's start with the bell cows here. Yeah.
I do want to clarify on these categories. If you look at my backfield breakdown article that is published right now on Football Guys, this is what we're going to be pulling off of. I don't have
that'll be in the YouTube and podcast description, just so everyone's aware. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have SnapShare. I'm going to list SnapShare moving forward because SnapShare is a consideration when I weigh these backfields. And so, if you're looking at Atlanta's backfield, you might say, well, it was pretty split on the usage. Tyler Algier played a lot more than I thought he was going to, but Bijan Robinson just absolutely dominated snaps in that backfield. And then on the flip side, if you were to look at Baltimore's backfield, and you would say, well, Derrick Henry took every single touch out of the backfield. What do you mean this isn't a bell cow situation? Last year, this year, it's a 50-50 snap share between him and Justice Hill, almost dead even when it comes to that. So while Derrick Henry's getting all the touches, Justice Hill's playing half the time, but meanwhile, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier's playing more than people might realize, but Bijan Robinson's playing almost every snap.
So let's start with Atlanta and talk about Bijan Robinson, because I think a lot of people might see this and say, well, Bijan Robinson had 12 carries and Tyler Algier had 10 carries. This is a very obvious backfield situation. But when you look at, like you said, the snap counts and the fact that Bijan Robinson had 6 receptions, which 100 yards and a touchdown. That was one of his best receiving performances ever. Yeah, a clear, obvious bell cow here. And what we see with Tyler Algier, the majority of his rushing attempts last year came late in the game in the second half, getting a handful of touches around the goal line. And that's pretty much exactly what we saw again this year, right, Jeff?
It is. It's a lot of it. They played Algier throughout the game, but it was very intentional usage when he was in the game. That was pretty much going to be a handoff to him. The biggest takeaway from this backfield is just the way that they moved Bijan Robinson around in within the receiving game. And this wasn't just, the running back stands offset occasionally or something like that, or he's a fake player out on the wing. They were bringing him throughout. They were running him on slants. His big touchdown was on a wheel route out of the backfield, but leading up to that, they had motioned him out and he came back in on a slant and they hit him on that. And so really looking creative ways that they're able to get him the ball in the passing game. And we already know he was the running back one for a lot of rankings and drafting there, but just this creative usage in the passing game is how he's going to allow him to become that running back one.
Yeah, in my rest of season rankings, I had Saquon ahead of Bijan Robinson, but I saw enough after this week that I put Bijan ahead of Saquon because, I mean, just elite usage, and that's exactly what we want to see there. We don't have to spend too much time on that. If you're watching the show, you know Bijan Robinson, good at football. Now, Carolina is the next one I want to talk about. We're going through the bell cows right now. We're going through them alphabetically. So Carolina, this one was a little bit surprising to me because we had a strong drumbeat about Rico Dowdle. We heard that they really like Trevor Etienne as well. But what we saw was Chuba Hubbard taking 75% of the backfield touches here. So does this one surprise you at all, Jeff? Do you think this can change as the season develops? Or do you think that Chuba Hubbard is in for another workload like he saw last year on his way to an RB2 finish?
Oh, I think he's going to get that workload. I think that we're going to see, I think it would take an injury or something to that effect. That as much talk as there was about splitting this backfield up, it was all Chuba Hubbard. And it reminds me of the Rams, where the Rams both last year and this year in the offseason, they talked about how they didn't want to put it all on Kyren Williams and wanted to be able to split up those touches. And then when the shots start firing, then it's all the Kyren Williams show. I think Chuba Hubbard's similar there. And for Carolina, this team is not equipped to play from behind, and the Jaguars put them behind. They need the run game, and they need to be able to play off of the run game with Bryce Young. This team is in trouble if they're playing from behind.
Yeah, and this is one that surprises me a little bit, just because of all of the stuff that we'd heard in the preseason. But I remember talking early in the offseason, like from a dynasty lens, saying like, yeah, he's a day 3 guy, but you kind of have to throw that out the window because he got this massive contract, and that kind of negates the day 3 draft pick that we look at as being this sort of damning metric for a running back. And with that contract, we expected to have big plans, but maybe got lost in a little bit of the preseason reports here. So yeah, I mean, based on what we saw this week, I'd expect that to continue. And it was overall a pretty poor performance for the Panthers. Bryce Young had some drops like he dealt with last year, but didn't look like his normal self. But I really liked what I saw from Tetairoa McMillan as well. So I think that, having that X receiver who kind of lived up to the bill, the production wasn't there, but really passed the eye test, looked like he's NFL ready. This is still a team that I have hopes in. And if people are starting to sell low on Panthers for whatever reason, I'll still buy into that offense. Next team I want to talk about real quickly, and this one isn't on your list, but the Chicago Bears. What we saw last night was DeAndre Swift, very much so being a bell cow, had every single touch out of the backfield except for DJ Moore, who came in for 3 rushing attempts, also had 3 receptions. And then we saw Kyle Monungai with a lone reception out of the backfield as well. So we talked about this a lot, Jeff. I mean, DeAndre Swift in that 2020 season with Ben Johnson was very much so a bell cow until he got injured in week 3, which opened up the door for Jamal Williams. And then we saw a committee approach for the rest of the season. But do you think that they just have some concern with Monungai being a rookie? Do you think maybe when Roschon Johnson is healthy, that can push for different usage? Or do you think this is just going to be the DeAndre Swift show for the rest of the year?
My expectation would be the DeAndre Swift show. And I think that when we were kind of trying to parse this backfield up, we were looking at comparing it to the Detroit backfield with Jahmyr Gibbs, with David Montgomery. But what do the Bears have that the Lions don't have in their backfield? That's a mobile quarterback. And I think that can change some things quite a bit. When Caleb Williams, we saw him moving around every single play. Caleb Williams was moving the pocket, escaping, running for 50 some yards. And that was something that he showed a little bit last year, but not to the extent that he did in week one. And that's something that Jared Goff doesn't have. And so I think that when you look at the way the Lions are constructed relative to the Bears, when you have Jared Goff back there, you're not able to run. You kind of need David Montgomery to keep defenses honest, keep them pulled in a little bit, pound them in the middle, soften them up there. When you've got Caleb Williams in the backfield, well, space it out, defense, and then Caleb Williams is going to take it up the middle on you and run through that space. And so
It's like
I
he was
think
shot out
that
of a
is a
cannon
factor.
yesterday. Like what
Yeah.
type of speed training was Caleb Williams doing this offseason? My
Well,
goodness, he looked like Lamar Jackson at times.
yeah, our friend Alfredo had commented on Twitter about how much faster he looks, and I said, well, everybody looks faster when they know where they're going.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with you a little bit. DeAndre Swift, man, like such a frustrating player to watch because when the blocks aren't there for him, he doesn't really have the footwork and the finesse to make something out of nothing. If there's nothing there, he's getting nothing. Like he's just going down immediately on contact. But if you just give him a little crease, I mean, he can explode through the line of scrimmage and pick up 10 yards in the blink of an eye. And I think is something that we want in this Ben Johnson offense are the explosive plays. So a frustrating player to watch at times, but we did see as the defense started to wear down in the second half, a lot of those gains that were going for 1-2 yards in the first half started turning into 8, 10, 12-yard gains in the second half. So I'd expect to see a lot more DeAndre Swift going forward.
I do want to say on that too, Monunga, I think, will be the other guy. I think a factor of it as well is that Brian Flores defense with all the different pressures and
Mhm.
having DeAndre Swift as a player that has had experience against that defense, being back there to be able to help pick up some of those blitzes to help Caleb Williams versus throwing a rookie Kyle Monunga out there in his very first game probably was a little bit of a factor too.
On to Cincinnati. Chase Brown had one of the highest opportunity shares of all running backs this week. 21 rushes, 3 targets, only ceded 2 backfield touches that both went to Samaje Perine, who was very inefficient with those. How much time do we need to spend here, Jeff? I mean, we knew this was going to happen, right? Like Chase Brown, the clear, obvious workhorse in this backfield. We talked about it. Samaje Perine's going to come in occasionally on situational downs. Taj Brooks is the handcuff to roster. But as long as Chase Brown's healthy, this is going to be the Chase Brown show.
Yeah, and just Taj Brooks not getting any carries probably is a little bit, but at the same time, this offense couldn't get anything going. And I
Yeah.
think that we know what this Bengals offense is. Toss it out. We know that Chase Brown is locked in as the lead back there.
Dallas. This is a surprising one. I don't think we expected to be talking about Dallas as a bell cow backfield after just 1 week, but Javonte Williams, nearly 80% of the backfield touches. Miles Sanders, maybe it's a early season, not fully conditioned yet to where he should be. Almost ripped off a long one and was chased down by a linebacker. Jaden Blue, a healthy inactive, and it says that they still have some things that they need to work on with him. So this is one of those where like I see the usage with Javonte Williams as a bell cow in week 1, and I did bump him up a little bit in my rest of season rankings, but I don't know if I'm totally taking the cheese yet. This one feels like it could be a little bit mercurial than what we saw in week 1. Would you agree with that, or do you think that this is just going to be Javonte Williams continuing to do what he did in week 1?
Do you think he played poorly when given his situation?
I
Because
don't. I think if you look at the box score, it looks bad, but I think that he was running hard. He was breaking tackles. He had that one play where he moved a pile of like 12 bodies, pushed it down to the 1-yard line. And that's good to see. I mean, I don't want to say, it, Jeff. I don't want to say rookie year Javonte, but there were a few plays where I was like, that looks like pre-injury Javonte.
so I think Javonte Williams might be the best buy right now in fantasy football because of just what you said and because the expectation that Jaden Blue is going to take that backfield and just the hesitation of anyone wanting to get in. And I do think that part of what we talked about to lead off, the different changes in the bell cow usage to draft a 0 running back team right now is you're not getting the committees that we did have not even that long ago. Plus, the overall scoring from the running back position is way up because of that bell cow usage. So you run into a situation where I think that 0 running back teams right now are probably arguably less viable unless you hit the jackpot on an injury backup, and that still happens, and it still creates value that you're able to plug into your backfield. But looking at a guy like Javonte Williams, that if you don't have anything in the backfield because you drafted that extreme 0 RB, like that's a player that I would look to be able to plug in there because of the hesitation around the fantasy mindset right now. Dallas was playing from behind that entire game. And you could have made the argument that Miles Sanders is a better passing down back than Javonte Williams, but they still gave it all to Javonte Williams. And I think that to me, seeing that game script that he was in and still getting up to 18 opportunities, that tells a lot about where they sit right now with him.
And what we talked about with Jaden Blue is like he's not a very good runner, but he's a home run hitter. Like, he's going to go down often on first contact, but if you can kick him out wide, he can cut up field and rip off the big play. But I don't know if you saw the story going around this morning, Jeff. We're recording on Tuesday night for anybody listening later. There's a story that came out today where Brian Schottenheimer said that he's probably going to be inactive again in week 2, Jaden Blue, because they said that he needs to work on consistency. And then you talk about consistency. I don't know if anybody better encompasses consistency than Javonte Williams. He might not have the speed that Jaden Blue does. He's not going to rip off the 80-yard touchdowns, but he can move the pile. He can keep his legs moving. He's always going to find the crease. And I almost wonder if, different running backs like different things. Like down in Jacksonville, we'll talk about that later. They're going to get wowed by the speed scores and the spark metrics and all that stuff. I think Brian Schottenheimer, being more of an old school head coach, just wants a grinder that's going to move the pile and pick up those 3 yards every time they ask him to. And to me, that's not a good sign for Jaden Blue's usage whatsoever.
Well, trust is a big, big part of it. We'll talk about Pittsburgh at some point, but trust is big there. And I think that trust with Dak Prescott, trust with Brian Schottenheimer. And as much as we want to play the Madden game and have the spark score and everything else, I mean, trust on that your running back is going to pick up the blitz, that he's going to do these things. And especially with Dak Prescott coming off an injury limited year, and Dak Prescott is the type, I mean, he had Ezekiel Elliott for years and years, and they had a very strong relationship. So I think that Prescott probably has some level of, I want my running back that I'm going to be able to trust him. And that's also why Kyren Williams is playing the way that Kyren Williams plays. As much as for all the lack of spark score there, Kyren Williams does exactly what Sean McVay wants him to do on every single play. And Sean McVay is the type of coach where that's a big, big deal.
You know who else is a very trustworthy running back that mitigates losses and picks up the hard yards? Josh Jacobs, another guy who is in bell cow territory. No surprise here. I think the takeaway is we were wondering, is it going to be Chris Brooks? Is it going to be Emmanuel Wilson? Who's the backup here? Well, both kind of came in a little bit. We got 20 opportunities for Josh Jacobs, 2 for Chris Brooks, and 1 for Emmanuel Wilson. So I don't know if that tips the hand too much as to who the handcuff would be. I think if Josh Jacobs did go down, we'd probably see Matt LaFleur revert to his tendencies with a committee approach where we'd see a little bit of Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks. But for the time being, Josh Jacobs, just a clear workhorse in a Packers offense that looked very, very good. Jordan Love healthy all of a sudden now looks like the Jordan Love that he did in 2023 again. And we could be looking at a huge, huge year here for Josh Jacobs.
Well, and really the story of it is the Packers defense and the way that they shut the Lions down, adding Micah Parsons into that defense. And you might have a situation where this is the best defense in the league, and they're just going to take the air out of the ball and rely on Josh Jacobs. I think when it comes to handcuffs, I think Emmanuel Wilson would be the early down back and get a little bit more rushing volume. And I think Chris Brooks would handle all the passing downs in that situation.
Yeah, and you do talk about it. That defense looks much, much better. Let's save it for tomorrow's show, but we'll talk a little bit about the Lions and kind of what our expectations are for them going forward. But not a good week 1 showing in the post Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn era. Indianapolis Colts, no surprise here. I think a lot of people are going to look at the box score, and this is one of the main reasons that we want to do this show, Jeff, is to add some context, because I think a lot of people are going to say, oh my goodness, DJ Giddens had 12 rushes. He is now in a timeshare with Jonathan Taylor. But you and I, having watched every game, poured through the context, dug into all this, we know a lot of that just came in garbage time. I mean, they were up multiple scores midway through the game. And what we saw to start was that Jonathan Taylor wasn't coming off the field. They weren't even mixing DJ Giddens in here and there. It was just Jonathan Taylor on every single drive. And then once they were up 3 scores, he hit the bench and it was DJ Giddens for the rest of the game. So that does give us some insight here. They released Khalil Herbert as well. Ulysses Bentley is the only other running back that saw a touch in that game. And that was way, way at the end of the game. But I think this does tell us that DJ Giddens, if something were to happen to Jonathan Taylor, they trust him enough to just put him out there for entire series at a time, which is a good sign for a rookie.
It is, but Tyler Goodson has missed some time with an injury, and he was a healthy inactive in this game. I think if you ran into, I think it was kind of just playing into caution. I think that should Jonathan Taylor miss time, you would see them splitting backfields, because all the camp reports were that Giddens and Goodson were kind of neck and neck, and that Goodson had a really strong camp as well. I think there would be the trust there on the passing downs for Goodson to handle those types of downs. But you're exactly right. They mentioned that Jonathan Taylor got dinged up with a little bit of a neck issue, and basically this game was over at halftime. The Dolphins were not competitive, and they just weren't going to put Taylor into a situation where anything could get worse. We're happy to let Giddens ride it out.
Yeah, no pushback there. And Jonathan Taylor looked good. Unfortunately, we saw Daniel Jones punching the touchdowns in. We'll hope that those go Jonathan Taylor's way in the future. Now, this is an interesting one to talk about, Jeff, because the backfield is already different than it was when you wrote this article. Things change quick in the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars, we might have fallen for the banana in the tailpipe. Early June, we get these reports that Tank Bigsby looks phenomenal. He's getting all of the touches with the first team. And now, with the benefit of hindsight, those were probably some fraudulent reports, hoping to build up some buzz for Tank Bigsby. Where it appears that they wanted to trade him. What we saw though was Travis Etienne very much so looking like a workhorse, especially early in this game, and looking good at that, like explosive plays, chunk plays, what we want to see from Travis Etienne. Tank Bigsby did get some run late in the game, but both of those touches came after Bayshaw Tootin and LaQuinn Allen got their touches, and then Tank Bigsby, of course, traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 5th and a 6th round pick. We did kind of gloss. Well, we'll talk about that one a little bit when we get to Philadelphia. But with this one right here, this one does scare me a little bit. And I'm excited for Travis Etienne right now. He's got the pedigree. This is a guy who has turned in top 12 fantasy performances before, a former first round pick. That being said, Travis Etienne, so similar to me to Rachaad White, a guy who isn't always the most reliable running back, but a guy who can rip off chunk plays, a guy who can make catches in the backfield. But then you see Bayshaw Tootin was involved, LaQuinn Allen was involved, and I can't help but think about last year where Rachaad White was the workhorse to start the season, and then Bucky Irving just kept growing that workload week in and week out until he kind of took over. So we haven't seen Liam Cohen shy away from a hot hand approach. I mean, we even saw a game last year where Sean Tucker had 17 touches. So while I'm excited about Travis Etienne, I think this is one that I'm probably pumping the brakes on more than any of the other workhorse backfields.
So maybe just starting from the beginning, unpacking kind of what happened, I think, in camp. The first days of practice, Travis Etienne was all over the place, and it was the type of thing of like a lot of usage in the passing game. Everything's going to Travis Etienne. And then there were a couple of days, like right at the beginning, when we're all hyper plugged into everything, and where Tank Bigsby was like kind of the first guy in line. And I think we all just spiraled off of that because of the the want for more information. And I think probably the reality with what happened there was, hey, we gave Travis a lot of work the last couple of days. Like, let's slow down a little bit on that. We're going to need this guy. Tank, you can handle the first reps here. And, we get the reports of Tank Bigsby's the first guy up in practice. And I think now we have some context to see. I do think that I hear you on the hesitation. And I definitely recognize that Tootin and Allen were brought in by this regime. I am a little bit more bullish on Etienne being the lead back there, and especially what we saw this past week. He looked very, very good against Carolina. I think they will be cognizant to try to make sure that they're keeping him fresh. But I think that a fresh Trevor Etienne, I'm a long way off from Travis Etienne. Yes, a fresh Travis Etienne. But I get it could not be more confusing because he has played with Trevor Lawrence for the last 15 years, it seems like.
Right.
And then his brother being named Trevor. It's like the confusion of that, I think, could not be more. But I think I understand the excitement around Tootin. I get it. But I also think that there is a lot of polish that needs to happen with Tootin. And I think that there is an acknowledgement with its coaching staff that a lot of polish needs to happen with Tootin. I think Allen would be should Etienne miss time, I think that it would be a straight committee with Tootin as the early down back and Allen as the passing down back. I think there's a lot more trust, and he's just better in the passing game when it comes to Allen. He was
like a wide receiver. Like he runs like really good routes.
He played before the other two backs, and he played before Tootin and Bigsby in this game.
He was the second one to take a snap behind Etienne.
Yeah. But I do think that they'll be cognizant about keeping Travis Etienne fresh, but at the same time, I don't know that short of an injury, this will move too far out of being a bell cow situation.
So I'm trying to look it up right now. I'm interested to see where Travis Etienne's dynasty value is because, we know this is a former first round pick and there was just such a heavy fade this year. It's showing that he still is being valued around like a late first round pick, Jeff. I know you said that you're a believer in this. If you're a contending team, you'd imagine that your first round pick going into next year is going to be a late first round pick. Would you give that up for Travis Etienne? I want to correct myself. This is saying a 2028 first round pick. So I think you could probably do a 2026 early second. I don't know. I definitely wouldn't want to give up a 2026 or a 2027 first, even if it's projecting late, but would definitely be interested in giving up a second if you can get ETN for that. But I don't know if anybody's selling at that cost, especially after this week one performance.
Yeah, I mean, a second plus like a random young wide receiver that I'm ready to give up on is probably where I would land on that. It's the type of thing of like it's catch-22. Like if you're going to say that I'm a contender, well then why do I need to trade for a 26-year-old running back if I'm already a contender? Like it's like I
Mhm.
should be pretty good at that spot. But yeah, I think that in as long as I mean, right now play it out in Dynasty because if Tootin plays at all a little bit more with the trade, you know what's going to happen with the dynasty community, and it's all going to be the assumption that every single week is going to be the Bishal Tootin takeover season.
Yeah. So what you're saying is wait for Bashal Tutin to have that first big touchdown and then go out and buy Travis Etienne. Is that the actual spin that you're putting on this one, Jeff?
I think so. As just as long as you don't have to give up a first. I mean, you're talking
Yeah.
about a second and some change.
So Ashton Jinty, clear, obvious workhorse, no surprise there. Saw about 88% of the backfield touches. We were kind of on this with our preseason reports. There were a lot of people looking at Raheem Mostert as that injury away guy, but it seems like Zamir White really solidified that role. We didn't see a lot from Zamir White. I mean, just 3 touches. Jinty was pretty ineffective with his touches. Zamir White was ineffective with his touches, but I think it is worth talking. Like, we don't need to have the Ashton Jinty conversation. This is a dynasty show. Everyone knows Ashton Jinty. We know he's going to be a workhorse. But I think knowing that like a new staff came in, had a chance to look at this backfield with fresh eyes and determine that Zamir White was the number 2 guy. I mean, he's free right now. Like he was dropped in so many dynasty leagues after what happened last year. And this is 2 coaches between Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly that have both displayed a tendency for leaning on a workhorse running back. So not that we're ever hoping for injuries, but if you're a Jinty manager or not, I think just picking up Zamir White and just keeping him stashed on your bench gives you that potential lottery ticket at some point this season if Jinty has to miss any time.
Yeah, I do feel a little bit guilty on this one because our buddy Dan was all over this, and we play in a lot of these dynasty leagues where like a backup running back is not available in these
Right.
leagues, and Zamir White was sitting there, and it was the type of thing of like I had to do some roster maneuvering, but I wanted to make sure that I got all the Zamir White before I said anything about it. I was a little bit selfish here because like it's the type of like there's potential value there, but then the hand was tipped a little bit when Mostert was announced as a healthy scratch before the game. But yeah, I mean, you're out there deep dynasty leagues. We didn't do a show last week, and I'll blame it on that. But I do apologize that I should have rang the bell a little bit louder.
Yeah, apologize to anybody for not doing a show last week. Jeff and I both needed to just like reset before the season started, but we're here. We're going to be bringing you 3 shows a week throughout the entire season. Let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers. Again, no big surprise here that Omarion Hampton was the workhorse, seeing about 90% of the backfield touches. That being said, Najee Harris, like, did not play at all in the preseason and training camp. Like, still needs to condition his body, still needs to get used to playing football again. When he doesn't have that preseason, we can anticipate that it could take him like 4 to 5 weeks to kind of get up to speed now and ready to play this year. So I think a lot of people are seeing this. Like, I did a Reddit AMA earlier today and had multiple people saying, should I drop Najee Harris in my redraft leagues? And absolutely not. I mean, the fact that he played on the field at all in week 1 is already putting him way ahead of where we thought he was going to be when people were talking about him missing an eye 2 months ago and never playing football again. Well, he's out there now, so I'm not overly concerned. I think that a month from now, I don't think that we're ever going to see like a true 50-50 split like we've seen in other Greg Roman offenses. I think that Omari and Hampton looked good. There were some highs and some lows, what you'd expect from a rookie in his NFL debut. But I think that as this season progresses, we will see Najee Harris not only have that injury away upside, but also carve out, 30-35% of the backfield touches where he can make for a kind of desperation flex play throughout bye weeks.
And this is where go buy Hampton. I'm saying right now that they played against a stout Chiefs defense.
Mm-hmm.
The points weren't there. And, just like what you said, I think that there's going to be thoughts that, well, Najee Harris's role is going to grow, and Omarion Hampton only gave me like 5 points in his first game, and
I
kind
saw
of
somebody, he's going to lose touches to the vet next week because he ran out of bounds when he should have just gone down. Yeah, there is this weird kind of like concern bubbling up when I'm just like, I saw a guy that looked really, really good out there.
well, and that's not even where we're wrong here. We're wrong about the pass volume in this
Yeah.
offense, and I think that cautionary tale. But every single time Jim Harbaugh would be asked about Justin Herbert, like it was like fanboy gushing about the quarterback, and I think that applying tendencies of Greg Roman offenses with Alex Smith and Tyrod Taylor and Colin Kaepernick at quarterback is a pretty horrible method to look at how Justin Herbert offense is going to function. Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman are very, very intelligent coaches, and they know to win the Super Bowl, Justin Herbert is the key to doing that. They're not going to treat Justin Herbert like Alex Smith, especially with the receiving talent that they have on this team. But that does open up the potential for Hampton to just be more of the bell cow because you're not pounding the ball into the middle of the line over and over again with Tyrod Taylor as your quarterback.
And also, like Hampton was plenty involved in the passing game too. So this is a team that I think surprised a lot of people because they had a pass rate well over expectation. Like they were throwing the ball a lot, but Hampton was out there running routes and out trying to didn't see a ton of work. I think he only saw 2 targets if I recall. So not a ton of work, but he was running routes and he was involved in there. And we talked about it. Like, yeah, this is a very different offense than what we've seen historically from Greg Roman. And I said this pre-show when we were kind of just yapping about the season and what our takeaways from week 1. And I said, like, if I had to design a wide receiver core in a lab, I think Ladd McConkey, this guy that you could just move all over the formation, that can win underneath, can win deep, can make plays after the catch. Keenan Allen, the steady veteran who can just consistently win immediately off the line and play out of the slot and be that underneath target. And then Quentin Johnston, the size speed freak who can rip off big plays and blow coverage consistently. Like, this is a really, really good wide receiver trio, maybe the best in the league right now. So, yeah, when you've got a superstar quarterback and a fantastic wide receiver core, that is going to pull defenses back and just open up huge rushing lanes for Omari and Hampton. So I'm with you. Definitely buying Hampton where I can. Continuing to move down the list here, Kyren Williams. There was a lot of talk in the preseason about how Blake Corum was going to be more involved. We heard that last offseason as well. This is one that you and I both just kind of said, no, we're not buying into that. Like, they just gave Kyren a lot of money. Like, Sean McVay loves Kyren Williams like a son, and sure enough, he comes out 18 carries to Blake Corum's 1, 2 targets to Blake Corum's 1, over 90% of the snap share here. That's not going to change at all this year, right, Jeff?
No, I don't think that it would. And Jarquez Hunter was a healthy scratch in this one. They had Cody Schrader as the third running back, and Schrader's heavily involved in special teams. I think that's an interesting point for these deeper leagues because I know Keaton Mitchell in Baltimore will get to there, but Hunter with the Rams, if that third running back is not a core special teamer, they're not going to be active on game days. But that doesn't mean that if Kyren Williams is out, that Jarquez Hunter wouldn't be involved. I think that if Kyren Williams were to miss time, I think Jarquez Hunter would be involved. He did have a strong camp. He did look very explosive. It's just that when you're making players inactive or active on game day, you only get 45. You need to make sure that all of those guys are going to contribute. And if you get into a situation where you're down to your third running back, I think a lot of times it goes back to
You're
the
waving the
Jim
white towel at
Sorgi.
that point anyway, right?
Well, yeah, the Jim Sorgi, they would ask why Jim Sorgi wouldn't get any snaps behind Peyton Manning in practice, and basically they would say, well, if Peyton Manning goes out, we're screwed anyways. So why do we have to give Jim Sorgi any playing time?
And crazy as it sounds too, like if they do get to a point where they're in a game and Kyron Williams and Blake Corum both go down, they could just put Jordan Whittington back there. Like they don't need a third running back on that team. Like they've
Well,
got
Cody
Whittington
Schrader
who
would
can
be
kind of
the guy that would do it, but yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, let's keep moving down the list here. Miami Dolphins, Devon Achane, technically the workhorse, 80% of the opportunity share, but very, very little overall volume. And my goodness, had Devon Achane not been bailed out with a fourth quarter, fourth down pass attempt behind the line of scrimmage that he was able to plunge into the end zone, I think people would be panicking. This looked like the worst offense I've seen in years. Like this offense, it was broken last year, and then somehow they managed to just break it even more. I don't think Mike McDaniel is going to have a job by week 3. Like they lose to the Patriots this week, and I think that's it for Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd. I mean, some of the vibes coming out of there.
It
A
seems
week
he's
two
acting like
firing
he's
would be.
already fired. Like the way he's talking, like he is beaten down bad.
He definitely is. And yeah, their next 3 games, playing the Patriots, then going to Buffalo, then having the Jets. There is no way Mike McDaniel will be 0-4 as the coach if he's not let go before that. But yeah, it is disappointing because I mean it's disappointing just in general because the talent that we know is on this
I
offense,
know.
and to go out there and just be a mess of it. But also at the same token, you didn't get the Devin Achane like fake 8-9 targets in this broken offense that was
Mhm.
kind of the staple of the second half of last year. You're exactly right. You got a garbage time touchdown that saved you from being one of the worst plays in the entire week.
Yeah. So I don't know. Let's talk actionable advice here. I was advocating to sell Devon Achane last offseason, egg all over my face for that call. Do you think now coming off of this like really, really down game that maybe you should be trying to buy Devon Achane, or do you think that so much of his production last year came because of a broken offense? The offense is still broken. Now it's even more broken. And if they're going to fire a coach midseason, like we don't know what to expect. Are you just kind of out on Devon Achane, or do you think that there might be a little buy window here in Dynasty?
Well, you probably a little bit more plugged in than I am right now on the just the temperature across fantasy football. Where do people sit with Devin Achane right now?
I mean, he was a huge faller in the preseason because of this calf injury that he was dealing with, but he stepped in and he kind of settled into that like middle of round 2. But like, I don't think anybody ever was like excited to take Devon Achane. It was just kind of like, he's there. I need to take him.
Then I would be buying. Yeah. So because I do think we have this broken offense that like I do think that we'll get the 7, 8, 9 target games from Achan here, probably even next week potentially. I think that the lack of targets might be a little bit fluky here. I think the more actionable advice, and you're in leagues with me in the listener leagues, and I drafted a lot of Ali Gordon or had a decent amount, and I traded Ali Gordon for some second round picks across
There you
some
go.
areas because I get the theory of what Raheem Mostert was, but the Dolphins need to score touchdowns in order to have a touchdown dependent, like early down option back. And I think
You're
we're a
telling me we're
long
not
way
going to have 2 RB1s on this offense?
well,
I don't know if
no,
we'll have one.
no.
All right, New Orleans Saints, Alvin Kamara, clear, obvious workhorse, no surprise there. Saw all of the running back touches. Kendra Miller did get some run in this game with 5 carries. Looked pretty good. Had 3 that he got bottled up and 2 where he looked kind of nice on him. That's kind of what you'd expect from Kendra Miller. No surprise on Alvin Kamara. We talked about him being a guy that we were buying, scored a nice touchdown as well. The Saints offense might have looked a little bit better than I think some people expected, like Spencer Rattler. Not great, but starting to look like an NFL quarterback that can keep a team afloat here. So I think that there's some pulse with Alvin Kamara. But the major takeaway here, which again, we were kind of on this with our training camp reports, Kendra Miller, the clear RB2 here, an injury away stash for sure, but is going to get some run as well. So this is kind of, we talked about it a little bit earlier when we were talking about Najee Harris, like what he could be late in the season. And I think that's what you could be looking at with Kendra Miller too, like injury away upside, but also kind of a desperation RB2 flex play once we get into bye weeks.
I think that my takeaway from this, I'm a little bit concerned because of the lack of passing game usage for Alvin Kamara. And
2 targets.
we see it, Kellen Moore coming from that Philadelphia offense. We know that Saquon Barkley is good in the passing game, but they didn't use Saquon Barkley in the passing game in Kellen Moore's offense. And if Alvin Kamara is going to be Saquon Barkley without a passing game usage from Alvin Kamara. That's a huge red flag for me. I think that when it comes to where, and I was pretty bullish on Kamara, but I don't like 11 rushes and 2 targets Alvin Kamara relative to, again, like Achan, get me up to that 6 or 7 target Alvin Kamara. But I, looking
Can I give you
long,
a little silver lining with Alvin Kamara's usage? Didn't see a lot of targets, and we obviously want to see targets, but ran a ton of routes. I mean, Juwan Johnson led the team with 47 routes, and Kamara wasn't far behind him, like 36 routes for a running back. That's good usage there. So maybe we see that change, but like I think the number one indicator that we want to look at for a running back is like how often are they running routes, knowing that those routes run will eventually turn into targets. So I definitely like I saw the 2 targets and I was like, oh no. But then when you kind of peel it back a little bit and see how many routes he was running, I think the fear here, of course, is that like Derek Carr was a very conservative quarterback. Like he'd be willing to just check down frequently, where Spencer Rattler is a bit more of a gunslinger. Like he's just going to let it rip downfield and let his receivers make a play on the ball. So I think that's my major pause here is the quarterback more than the usage.
and I was hoping you'd go just a little bit longer because I wanted to see if you were to trade Alvin Kamara.
You're talking in
Kind of
Dynasty?
no, I'm talking in
Oh,
real football. The New Orleans Saints were to trade Alvin
which would
Kamara.
not surprise me very much. Would not surprise me
It
very much at
does
all.
kind
Yeah,
of his it does, it's not a cap favorable move. It just say that he signed an extension in the middle of last year. It would not be a cap favorable move for the Saints, but I kind of wonder if you were to go out and grab Alvin Kamara right now, if that's not the theory play on like hoping that you've got an Alvin Kamara that maybe ends up in like a
ends
Kansas
up in
City or
Kansas
something like
City.
that.
Yeah. Look at that. We
Yeah,
got there.
and yeah, but Kendra Miller, I think you're right there on them. But Devin Neal played too, and that's interesting.
It is, yeah. I think Kendra Miller looked a lot better to me than Devin Neal did, but to get out there as a rookie in your NFL debut and get a couple of touches, definitely don't want to ignore that either. So this is a much deeper bag than we saw last year from Kellen Moore, where it was just all the Saquon Barkley show. So he does. We've seen throughout his entire career as an offensive coordinator and now a head coach, like he very much so tailors his game planning and his personnel usage to the guys that he has on staff. And he clearly likes Kendra Miller, like gushed about him a lot this preseason. And we might not see him, Alvin Kamara, I'm saying, just kind of running away like we had hoped for. Let's talk about the New York Giants here. Tyrone Tracy, 70% opportunity share, which we like to see. Cam Scadaboo had a couple of targets, a couple of rushes. Devin Singletary had 3 rushes himself. This one worries me a little bit, and I actually moved Tyrone Tracy down in my rest of season rankings just because he didn't look that great. And I don't think Singletary or Scadaboo looked that great either, but I was really hoping that like week 1 would kind of like send a message where like Tyrone Tracy came out and like really ran away with the backfield. And I didn't really get that feeling. Meanwhile, Scadaboo, who had by the numbers, a very disappointing performance, did put a really nice play on tape where he trucked 3 defenders on 1 reception. It was the only positive play of the game, but coaches are going to see that, especially a guy like Brian Dable, and might give him a little bit more run. I still believe that Tyrone Tracy is the best running back in this group, but I wanted to see him run away with that job a little bit more in week 1, and it just didn't really feel like he did that.
So this is a good jumping off point for something that I'm thinking about backfields here. But flashback to last year, week 1 with the Saints, Jamal Williams was very involved in that game, and that was a big blowout game for the Saints, a big win over Carolina. But that gave the indication that we would be seeing like the traditional Saints backfield of like Kamara being the passing down back and Jamal Williams being the rushing back. And then Jamal Williams couldn't play anymore. In week 2, they were like, you're done. Like, we're not doing this
I
anymore.
think he was released by like week 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that we know, like through camp, coaches will say that they don't really know what they have in the backfield until the bullets start flying, more or less. Whereas, like, I think passing attack, you can get a better indication of that in camp. You kind of have an idea of the roles the receivers are going to play. Like running backs, you kind of need the lights to turn on. And then I think that I really hesitate to buy too much into all of this that we saw from week 1 with the running backs, because I do think that there can be a severe adjustment into week 2 for running backs. But I think just in general, the Giants, they haven't announced Jackson Dart as the starter yet, but they made sure that on Sunday that they were putting those stories out there.
I think they did say
Maybe.
they were going back with Russell Wilson for week 2.
Okay.
For week 2. There was no, like, Russell Wilson's our guy. It's like, yeah, he'll be out there again starting in week 2.
And they play
He looked
Dallas.
bad, dude. He
So
looked bad.
yeah, he's done. I mean, we know what we have here. It's
It's a
and I
brutal
understand.
New York media too, that fan
Yeah.
base, like, they're gonna be calling for Dart's name by midway through the first quarter if Russ looks like he did last week.
Yeah, if Russell looks like we did last week, I don't know that he's getting to halftime. So, or coming out of halftime, I just think that, because especially if Dallas clicks a little bit, an extra day off for Dallas, and then they could put it on the Giants a little bit. But I think that Tracy's, yeah, I mean, we knew the reports that he was lead back there, and Scatterbo didn't look good, but at the same time, like, he did have that one thing where he trucked everybody, and everybody's talking about that. But also, you wonder, if you're going to a rookie quarterback, are you going to want to have a little bit more of a veteran running back next to him?
Yeah, and I think that could go either way. So yeah, this will be one that I think just a very fluid situation all around, quarterbacks, running backs. We'll see how this one shakes out. The New York Jets, Jeff. I did this thing today, just an accountability thread on Twitter where I talk about my hits, my misses, and my maybes. And I think my biggest miss from this offseason, I'm really kicking myself for, because I saw through it. Like, I remember months ago, you and I talking about this backfield where Aaron Glenn was saying, like, oh, it's going to be a 3-headed committee. And I said, that is ridiculous. Like, there is no way Breece Hall is a committee back by Breece Hall. If they actually put him in a committee, 31 NFL GMs are going to be calling on Monday morning trying to trade for Breece Hall. And then it just became so deafening where they're like, Braylon Allen looks so good, and we really like Isaiah Davis. And preseason usage was split up between the three of them. Well, we were the fools that fell for it. Breece Hall came out, 70% opportunity share, had over 140 yards on the day. And my goodness, like, he looked like the Breece Hall of old, like, just gashing big play after big play. That run game with Justin Fields just looked absolutely unstoppable. And I remember about 2 weeks ago, us talking about this backfield and saying, wait until after week 1 when, they come out with this committee approach, and then you can buy low on Breece Hall. Well, bam, that window slammed shut. There's no buying low on Breece Hall anymore.
No, there's not, which is good. That good, because
Yeah,
Breece Hall is
I'm
that
repping it
level
today.
of
I'm wearing my
player.
Breece Hall shirt today.
Yeah.
I gotta stay true to the brand. I'm a fool for fading him, and I'll never ever do it again.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that caught me on, like, Keon Coleman, like, I go back,
Yeah.
I made sure to be cognizant this year, like the last week or two before we really got into the season, to think back what I thought in the spring, and, like, kind of like look through and, like, reset myself a little bit on where I kind of came into the process. And yeah, you're exactly right. Breece Hall was one that I wasn't buying it in the spring, and to be able to circle back on that one and say, yeah, it was. I wish my ranks were different on where I came into the season on Breece Hall. So I'll just think that and say that. But it did get pretty ridiculous on where the fade was going with Breece Hall. And, this is a backfield. Justin Fields, we know, is going to take a portion of that backfield, but we also know they're not going to throw the ball at all outside of throwing it to Garrett Wilson. So it's going to be plenty there for Breece Hall.
And also that threat of Justin Fields just opens up even more lanes for Breece Hall. So, I mean, just we overthought it. There's no other way to put it. Like, we overthought Breece Hall. I'm a big fan of the talent. Like, I've been a big believer, spent the last few off seasons buying Breece Hall. But with the coaching change, I just bought into the new narrative, and I wish I hadn't. Philadelphia Eagles. This one is a little bit interesting because you look at it, Saquon Barkley, 79% of the opportunities. You assume that he is going to be a workhorse. But Jeff, I know you dig deep into this and you watch the game as well. There was a lot of Will Shipley coming in before he got injured. We're here now, fractured rib happened on a kick return. Then they go out and, as we mentioned earlier, trade a 5th and a 6th round pick for Tank Bigsby. And we're getting all of these conflicting reports where they say, like, oh, this is an indictment on Will Shipley. His injury's fine. He'll be back soon. They just bought him to be a kick returner, which 5th and a 6th round pick for a kick returner, that's not really adding up to me that much. Then we get a report that Will Shipley's ribs are broken, which we've seen some people play through. We've seen other people miss time with that. So This is one where we heard a lot in the offseason that they want to lessen Saquon Barkley's workload. And I think what we saw in week one and what we saw with the trade post week one is that that might actually be a real thing where we're seeing Saquon Barkley maybe is more of a 60 to 70% snap share player than the 90+% player he was last year. No,
I don't know about that. I think that Saquon Barkley is going to get used plenty, but I think it's first off, the Eagles are so flush with draft picks because of all the maneuvering that they've done. They basically can't use all their picks, and so it's kind of Howie Roseman now reminds me of like the wily old guy in your dynasty league that every single time, like he's trading his 4th round picks for like guys like a Javonte Williams. When everybody's bagging on Javonte Williams, he sends off a 4th round pick for Javonte Williams, and just picking up production from different sources. And I think that the Bigsby's kind of that of it's cost controlled running back. I think it probably is a little bit more of an indictment on AJ Dillon than it is on Will Shipley, to be honest.
probably, yeah.
With the injury to Will Shipley, being conservative with that, but also recognizing, we've got more picks than we're going to be able to use. So we may as well go out there and get a back that we're comfortable with. I think Saquon Barkley is still going to touch the ball plenty of times. I mean, 23 opportunities in this game. That's on the higher end of where players came in this week.
Christian McCaffrey with the San Francisco 49ers, very clear workhorse. Brian Robinson, though, getting a handful of touches in there, 9 rushes, 2 targets. But yeah, this is the Christian McCaffrey. I do my rest of season rankings. He was my RB4 in pre-draft rankings. All it took was seeing how week 1 played out for me to move him right up to RB1. Like, the only concern with Christian McCaffrey was health. He's healthy. I don't know what else there is to say. Like, a healthy Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in fantasy football.
Yeah, I closed with him as my running back 3. I did because I missed the news an hour before kickoff that he was hurt, and I think that there was a big industry fade when that happened on the final push to finalize your preseason rankings. But I had him at running back 3, and I feel pretty good about that now. And wouldn't the great irony of it all be that literally everybody else for the 49ers gets hurt except for Christian McCaffrey?
Which is trending that way right now. George Kittle on IR, Juwan Jennings dealing with a shoulder injury, and now Brock Purdy hurt as well. So Mac Jones might be the next man up there, and we'll see how that works out. Tennessee Titans, Tony Pollard picked up right where he left off last year. Clear workhorse. He had 19 targets. Julius Chestnut saw just 2. It's worth noting Tajay Spears is on IR. We're hoping that he can come back around week 5, week 7, sometime in that area. And there was a lot of buzz about him coming in and kind of pushing for an RB1B type role. We heard that last year, and it never really happened. Tony Pollard looks good, man. Like, ever since joining the Tennessee Titans, we saw the splash plays behind Ezekiel Elliott for a handful of years, but now with a backfield to himself, I mean, the Tennessee Titans as a whole aren't a great offense, but Tony Pollard is getting like as close to RB1 usage as we could hope for.
Yeah, I mean, 89 yards, would have liked to see him get in the end zone, but we know that Denver defense, and people were so spooked about this Denver defense that I do believe that Sterling Shepard or Calvin Ridley was a real question that we got on Sunday Morning Live on where people were looking at Calvin Ridley. And yeah, Calvin Ridley did have only like 4 for 22, but like it gets pretty extreme sometimes on some of the just the hype and just where people end up on weighing Sterling Shepard or Calvin Ridley as the start.
I can one up you on that one. I got a DM saying Keandre Lambert-Smith or Calvin Ridley, and they said, the certain curtain, like, I don't want to mess with any of that. And I was like, whoa, no, just put Calvin Ridley in your lineup. Like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Like, we don't make these big swings before the season kicks off. So yeah, I think and that's another one where I think like the box score for Cam Ward didn't look very good, but I liked what I saw. There were a lot of dropped passes, but Cam Ward, man, like exactly what I said that I liked about him. Just like cool composure, just seemed collected out on the field. Like, it seemed like the moment was never too big for him. Like, when I was watching him play, it didn't look like a rookie in his first NFL start. I felt like I was just watching a veteran that was just like running an offense and like doing it pretty relaxed and seamlessly. So still high hopes for Cam Ward, even though that game didn't turn out too well. Last bell cow backfield, Jeff. And then we're going to talk about some muddy backfields. But Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is another one that I don't think you fell for the trap quite as much as I did. But I just wasn't really buying into Bucky Irving being a bell cow running back. I saw Rachaad White being plenty involved last year before his injury. I saw Sean Tucker getting some work in there as well. But my goodness, Bucky Irving got almost all of the touches. So this is one of those where the coaching changes, I think, makes a difference. Like we see in Jacksonville now, Liam Cohen is there, and Travis Etienne was the clear and obvious RB1. We saw 4 running backs getting touches there, and here with Josh Grizzard now in Tampa Bay, I don't think we're going to see that sort of split among the running backs. Sounds like it's just going to be Bucky Irving, and this is a team out there with no Tristan Wirfs. The offensive line wasn't doing him any favors, but Bucky Irving looked very, very good, just like he did down the stretch last year.
Did he look good?
I think the offensive line, I went back this morning and I watched every Bucky Irving touch because I was disappointed by the stat line. And when I looked at it, I think he still looked good. Tristan Wirfs wasn't out there and he was getting clobbered in the backfield a bunch. But on the rare occasion, there was a little crease. He was able to rip off 10, 11 yards. There were a few times where he got hit in the backfield, what would have been a 2-3 yard loss. He was able to turn into a no gain or a 1 yard rush. So, it wasn't. First of all, we talked about this a lot this offseason. Like regression as a whole for Tampa Bay was going to hit. And I think we saw that in week 1. But I still think Bucky Irving is a talented back and clearly has the faith of the coaching staff.
Yeah. And I think that I said in my article, looking at this as, we see Devin Achane going into last year, Tony Pollard going into a couple years ago, where we see these backs that are the clear change of pace back, and they're average like 5.5 yards per rush, and just this crazy efficiency. And there's an assumption that, well, yeah, I mean, he's averaging 5.5 yards per rush. Give him 20 rushes per game, and he'll be having 130 yards. But then we see them shift into that role, and they're running it into the middle of the line a lot more. That efficiency drops, and I think that we might be in for a little bit of the Bucky Irving on that. He going from a 5 yards per carry player to a 4 yards per carry player just because of the change in usage. But he's still a very explosive player and still very, very good. Got the touchdown in this one, so it's a little bit of the Achane type of saved his day with the touchdown. We probably have a lot more hand rigging without that touchdown, but the usage certainly portrays him being the lead back right now.
Yeah, and some fun 21 personnel, which we don't see a lot of. They threw Rachaad White out there with Bucky Irving a handful of times on the opening drive, and that's always fun to see. But would definitely like to see Rachaad White getting some more touches out there, a guy that I was kind of pounding the table for this offseason that was just kind of a no factor in this game. All right, Jeff, time to go into the committees with a lead back. Trey Benson saw a lot more work than I think people had anticipated. What we saw was a 65-35 split in favor of James Conner. And Trey Benson not only got the work, but also had a really, really nice play where he was able to show some juice, got outside, ran up the sideline, and I mean, just chased down by a defensive end on a Herculean effort that, like, you hear getting chased down by a defensive end, and that might scare you somewhat. But Next Gen Stats picked him. I don't know if you saw that, Jeff, going like 21 miles an hour or something like that. Like, my goodness. But Trey Benson, this close to ripping off what could have been a huge touchdown, and he looked good. And this is the split that we'd hoped to see. Like, no disrespect to James Conner, a very good player, but Trey Benson is also a good player, and it seems like he is playing better now than he did last year.
Well, and this is the split that the thing that we had hoped to see is no Emari Demercado. And I think that that's the biggest takeaway. Not having Emari Demercado as that default, kind of like the Ty Johnson third down back type role, and looking at a 3-headed committee backfield. The fact that Trey Benson was able to edge him out to be able to have that role opens up everything for Benson when it comes to having two backs here, but also the potential that should James Conner miss time, we could be looking at a 3-down back with Trey Benson potentially, and even moving forward, getting a 3-down back with Trey Benson like next year, the year after, depending on what happens with James Conner's contract situation. I mean, that's what you were hoping to see, I think, for Benson going into week 1.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's going to be any buy window on Trey Benson now because, I think that closed. I think he had an opportunity to buy in the offseason, but now that he looked good in week 1, ripped off the big play, carved out a big chunk of that backfield, I don't think anybody's really going to be interested in selling Trey Benson. So I don't know if there's really an actionable take here besides just like hold these guys and wait to see how it breaks. But wouldn't surprise me if Trey Benson just keeps pushing for more and more work throughout this season. Baltimore, I want to talk about this one, Jeff, because you're going to surprise a lot of people putting the Baltimore Ravens in the committee conversation here, but Justice Hill was on the field a ton. We obviously got the inactive healthy scratch for Keaton Mitchell. Derrick Henry dominated the touches with almost an 80% share, but Justice Hill is on the field a lot more than I think people realize.
Yeah, he is. He's on the field half the time. It's almost dead even 50-50 split when it comes to Henry and Hill. It's just that, and then this game was profound in the way that it was really just Zay Flowers getting targeted. It wasn't, Bateman didn't do anything. There wasn't any Mark Andrews. It was all Zay Flowers, or it was Lamar Jackson keeping the ball on a run. But we've seen Justice Hill had a couple of games last year. He was above 6 targets 4 times. They ended up losing 3 of those games. They ended up losing this game, but they were not playing this like it was going to be a loss for most of the game. So we didn't see, while Justice Hill was out there, we didn't see the targets that goes to Justice Hill. But it really, you look at last year, the way it broke down would be like this, where Henry would have 18 rushes, only 1 target, and then Justice Hill would have 2 to 4 rushes and 6 targets, and kind of be a kind of an equal split committee backfield in terms of situation.
Yeah, I'm completely with you there. I mean, I'm not concerned whatsoever. Derrick Henry is going to be Derrick Henry. I think we can just move on to the next one here. The Buffalo Bills. This is another one where James Cook dominated the snap share, or I'm sorry, dominated the touch share with 75% of the touches, but was off the field quite a bit where they make room for Ty Johnson. Ray Davis came in the game as well. But this is one where you and I talked a lot about buying James Cook this offseason. And for whatever reason, like we thought that extension would really kind of shoot his value up, and it never really happened. Like there wasn't much of a reaction to him getting this multi-year deal to stay in Buffalo, but he was out there looking like his old self, plenty involved in the passing game, dominating touches. So this falls into the committee conversation, but James Cook is probably the only guy that we really care about in fantasy, barring an injury, right?
Yeah, and the biggest takeaway in this was the lack of Ray Davis, and he really was not involved at all, didn't get very many snaps. It really was just kind of James Cook and Ty Johnson. And even when Davis did get on the field, he had one play that I remember vividly watching it on, like, you think like, hit this hole, you've got 5 yards, you've got a first down, and like he just didn't go anywhere. And I feel like sometimes you see that with backs where it's like, wait a minute, I thought that looked like a 5-yard run to me, and you didn't get anything on it.
Yeah. Onto the Cleveland Browns. Dylan Sampson dominated the touches in this backfield, but of course we're burying the lead here. It sounds like Quinshon Judkins is going to return to practice today. Or I'm sorry, not today, this week. Whether he's able to play in week 2 or not, still yet to be seen. We saw Jerome Ford coming in for a handful of touches here and there, but he looked just absolutely awful. Raheem Sanders, of course, not only scored a touchdown, but the first rookie of the 2025 class to punch a touchdown in, just like we all expected here. What's your takeaway with Dylan Sampson, though, Jeff? Because the work was there. 12 rushes, 8 targets. That is very exciting usage. But outside of a couple of decent catch and runs, there wasn't a whole lot of production to be had.
Well, so Jerome Ford outsnapped him kind of by a lot, but he didn't have any touches on those snaps. But that kind of raises my eyebrows a little bit, because when you're looking at plugging Quinshon Judkins back in, we have a pretty good idea of what Quinshon Judkins' role would be as an early down back, probably the guy getting the volume. And so, yeah, Dylan Sampson had 8 targets, but then Jerome Ford was in the game for 41 snaps and didn't touch the ball, which was blocking somebody during those snaps. How's it going to be? Are they going to go with Dylan Sampson as the passing down back? Are they going to go with Jerome Ford, not involved in the passing game other than to be an extra lineman, basically, with Quinshon Judkins kind of taking this Dylan Sampson usage? I think this backfield's really fascinating on how it all shakes out. And congratulations to Raheem Sanders to get the touchdown. And that's the highlight of his rookie year, probably, outside of an injury.
And, I'm looking at it right now again. Like I like to look at how many routes these guys are running, because I think that is kind of like the baseline for what we want to see. And really shocking to see this here, Jeff. But Dylan Sampson ran 25 routes, or I'm sorry, Jerome Ford ran 25 routes to Dylan Sampson's 15, which means Dylan Sampson was getting targeted on over half of the routes
Yeah.
that he ran. Like that, to me, says unsustainable, unless I got to go back and rewatch exactly what happened with Dylan Sampson now to see if they like I watched the game, but I need to go back now and like just watch Dylan Sampson to see if they were just scheming him up plays where he was the first read or what exactly happened here. Because seeing over 50% target rate on routes run, that is just something that you never really see in the NFL outside of like maybe a preseason package where they're putting a guy out there for 4 or 5 snaps, just forcing the ball to him. But kind of weird to see that in a regular season NFL game. On to the Denver Broncos. Oh boy, so much talk this offseason about whether J.K. Dobbins or R.J. Harvey would be the pass catching back in Denver. And what do we see? Tyler Bidet comes out with a team high 6 targets out of the backfield. What do we make of this disaster? Sean Payton, if you're watching this show, why do you have to ruin everything we love?
It's tough, man, because I mean, Tyler Bidet was not good, but I think that throughout all the arguments of is it going to be J.K. Dobbins or R.J. Harvey as the passing down back, nobody was saying neither. And right now it's neither. And I think that to get to the value of, we talk about players saving their day on one play, where RJ Harvey did that at a 50-yard rush that saved his day. Otherwise, we would probably have every single red flag up about RJ Harvey right now. But Dobbins, a lot of that work came when the game was not in doubt, icing the game. And Tyler Bidet having the passing down role, and this being a 3-headed backfield. And I think that there was talk about it being a 3-headed backfield at certain points. And, with maybe like Audric Estime was supposed to be the guy, or Jaleel McLaughlin, but Bidet kind of working in there as that passing down back, really kind of the Darren Sproles within, if you're to think about it. And maybe Dobbins is the Mark Ingram, and that leaves RJ Harvey kind of as the Pierre Thomas. And if you remember back to then, nobody was really excited to have Pierre Thomas on their team. But I feel like that's kind of where we sit right now.
And I do want to say, like, RJ Harvey, I think that's very what you'd expect from RJ Harvey is like, 2 yards, 3 yards, 2 yards, 4 yards, 50 yards. Like, that's the type of player that he is. And I think that being that spark plug, like, there is a role for that in the offense. I don't know what the actionable advice is here. Like, Tyler Bidet probably available on your dynasty rosters. Got to pick him up on waivers just to kind of see what happens if he maintains this role. But we also saw last year, like, trying to get a read on Sean Payton's backfield. Like, it would be Jaleel McLaughlin one week, and then Javonte Williams the next, then Audric Estime the next. And I almost wonder if we just like fell for the trap again. Like, what were we even thinking, trying to think that maybe we understood what Sean Payton was going to do in this backfield. I think this is just going to be one of those that, like, on a weekly basis is going to be very tough to predict. Like, in your dynasty best ball leagues, sure, that's great. Just hope that one of these guys can have a big day. But it feels like whether it's J.K. Dobbins, R.J. Harvey, or Bidet that you put in your lineup, it feels like you can be looking at a potential 1.2 point week from any of these guys.
It does. I mean, Dobbins is the guy that you want in your lineup right now. Like, full stop. Dobbins is the guy that you want in your lineup right now. RJ Harvey, you're not moving on from him. You're still holding it. It still could be there. It still could break his way. But I think the actionable advice is Dobbins is the player that I would feel comfortable playing in the Denver backfield right now. And other than that, I don't feel comfortable playing the other two.
Detroit, very much so a committee approach, a 55-45 split in favor of Jahmyr Gibbs. Overall, though, just a pretty bad day. Jahmyr Gibbs was able to bail out his fantasy day with 10 receptions, albeit just 31 yards, but in your half PPR, full PPR leagues, ended up looking pretty good when it was all said and done. I don't know, Jeff, I want to save some of this conversation for tomorrow. I want to kind of focus on the backfield today, but some panic might be starting to settle in a little bit with Detroit. This could just be, road golf outside, and it could be as simple as that. And they could bounce back, as soon as they're playing back up in Detroit. But that Packers defense was good, and they really stifled them. And more than anything, it was just a very vanilla offense. Like, there weren't the fun deep crossers and the pre-snap motion and all the things that we love about this offense. It looked like a junior high playbook out there, and that is not what you want to see with this slew of pass catchers.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely want to see another game, because there could be Green Bay was a very good defense before they got Micah Parsons, and we all know the stats on Dallas's defense with Micah Parsons on the field and Micah Parsons not on the field. It's like night and day, where they're a top 5 unit with Parsons and they are bottom of the league without him. And so Green Bay already starting as a top 5 unit and throwing Parsons in there. I mean, this could really be a great buying opportunity for any of the Lions in fantasy, and write it off as the Packers are just going to be one of those defenses you just don't want any part of when your team is going against them. And this backfield, and just talking about this backfield, it's fascinating because they always found a way to make it almost dead even, but we got a lot of talk about it being a little bit more Jahmyr Gibbs this year. But then at the game script forces it to be more Jahmyr Gibbs. It's the type of thing of like, do we have the even backfield? Is it only game script, or is it now Jahmyr Gibbs is the lead back here and Montgomery's taking a little bit of the back seat? We can't really, I think right now, given just the way that this game went, you can't really make that decision right now. But
Right.
and it's like you can't move off David Montgomery right now, because what can you move off of him for? It's nobody wants this Detroit offense right now because of where the narratives sit with it. But it might be the type of thing where David Montgomery is nowhere near as valuable as he was in the past, and Gibbs does edge a little bit. And we probably, if there's going to be any decline in this offense, in order for Gibbs to live up to his draft value, you're going to need him to be more of that lead back.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking for a Lions bounce back, like you look at the schedule, Bears defense looked really, really good, and they play the Bears next week. Then they play the Ravens the week after. The Browns have a good defense as well. They've got a home road game, or I'm sorry, a road outdoor game against Cincinnati that could kind of be that bounce back in week 5. But after that, on the road against the Chiefs, then they play the Buccaneers, then the Vikings, then the Commanders, then the Eagles. I mean, there aren't really many points early in the season where you could say like, okay, this is going to be the get right game for Detroit. And we talked a lot about the regression and the brain drain and how that could impact this offense. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out over the next month or so. On to Houston. This is the last of the ones that will constitute as a committee with a lead back. And we've got Nick Chubb as the clear lead back in this committee. 56% opportunity share, was on the field a lot. You know, we got word before the season kicked off that they want to view him as that bell cow and they want to lean on him and give him a lot of usage. And that's what we saw. But Jeff, I went back and I watched Nick Chubb because I was kind of surprised to see him get that many touches. And I want to say this as politely as possible, but he looks like an old running back who has had a series of devastating knee injuries. I mean, like you can see it that like he is like wincing at times and like, you know, not fully stiffening his legs out. And when he slows down, it's not just like coming to a stop. It's kind of like, you know, decelerating slowly. And I really, really wonder, you know, just after what he's been through, if he's going to be able to maintain this sort of workload for a full 17 game season. So I'm already looking to buy Dameon Pierce, Woody Marks, some of these guys for like really, really cheap, just in case Chubb can or cannot hold up.
Yeah, and I think my biggest takeaway in regards to this is the Woody Marks. And Woody Marks played. There's not been any positive news about Woody Marks in camp, and Dario Gumbawale kind of is the passing down back here. We've seen him have that role in this offense before, and I know it's a new offensive coordinator, but they absolutely love Dario Gumbawale in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Dameon Pierce projects as the backup to Nick Chubb as the potential. I feel like if you want to invest cheap in this backfield, Pierce is the direction to go to this. We haven't seen any positive news on Joe Mixon playing at all this year. And, you know, it is so uncertain. That
I didn't even factor him in. Like, it's just out of sight, out of mind. Like, I'm not even thinking about Joe Mixon at this point. And what I want to say real quick with Dameon Pierce, you know, a lot of people are quick to just say that he's dust, that his career's over, yada, yada, yada. You got to start last year, 176 yards rushing plus 2 yards as a receiver. Like there was one game last year where they kind of opened it up and yeah, it was a meaningless week 18 game, but Dameon Pierce showed that he can still shoulder a big load and carry the ball for almost 200 yards.
Yeah, I just think the actionable here is that if there's still going to be this Woody Marks hive, then sell Woody Marks, because I just don't. I think it's really tough for us to realize in Dynasty that you look at day 3 players, and I think it can be illustrative if you're somebody that is buying all these rookies that just look back 2 or 3 drafts ago about, you know, the 4th round and look who the names in the 4th round, especially if you were playing Dynasty, then you'll be able to have like that light bulb will click on and be like, oh, I remember when everybody was all into this guy and he didn't do anything at all. I feel like there's a lot of trying to will Woody Marks to be a thing because of how
Yeah.
ugly this backfield is. And I don't know that I buy that Woody Marks is going to be a thing. And that's probably my actionable take on this of, if anybody looks at how poorly Nick Chubb performed it. And even, I mean, the Rams are a very good defense and
Mhm.
13 carries for 60 yards. I know how he looks like running the ball, but 13 carries for 60 yards is pretty solid still going up against a
And
strong Rams
he's still a
defense.
thumper. Like he's not going
Yeah.
to be ripping off big plays, but like there were a few times where he was still lowering his shoulder, running through defenders. Like he's still got the power and he's got that short area burst where he like accelerates into contact. But if you give him a wide open lane, he's probably going to run for about 15 or 20 yards before a linebacker catches up to him. And I think that's my fear here is like a good running back, but kind of like an even more watered down version of what we were saying about Javonte Williams. All right, Jeff, we have a handful of backs fields that we're still going to talk about here, and these are our true committee backs in this first one on the list. I got to be honest, I did not expect to be talking about today, but the usage, Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt in a dead 50-50 split. Each of them got 5 carries. Each of them got 3 targets. How much of this was game script? And how much of this do you think is going to be a trend that we're going to see going forward? I mean, we know Kareem Hunt, very useful as a pass catcher, very good as a pass blocker as well. And with them playing from behind, do you think that kind of pushed Kareem Hunt onto the field a little bit more? Or am I just coping through the, how much I pounded the table for Isaiah Pacheco this offseason?
Rashard Smith did get some snaps too, but he didn't
Yeah.
play. He didn't get any touches. But Pacheco did have the edge in snaps. I think that the concerning thing is that Kareem Hunt was brought in as the short yardage back, and so if Kareem Hunt's going to be the dedicated short yardage back, and if they're going to grow a role for Rashard Smith in the passing game, that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for Isaiah Pacheco. And to be honest, this one floored me. I just didn't expect this because, those bags are heavy for Isaiah Pacheco. And there was a story on Thursday I saw before the game where he was talking about how he's on a revenge tour and he's going to how great he feels and how great he looks and how he's going to show everybody that doesn't believe in him that he's fully back. And I think right now the only revenge is in people that drafted him in their fantasy leagues.
And it is worth saying, he looked better than Kareem Hunt, I'd say, as a rusher. Had almost twice as many yards per carry, if that's something that you care about at all. I do hope that like with game scripts that are a little bit more favorable, like where the Chiefs are up, we could see him, be the Isaiah Pacheco of 2 years ago, where he's just running all over the field, making those angry runs, running through defenders, scoring multiple touchdowns a game. But definitely having some pause here. So let me ask you again, just trying to put like an actionable spin on this one. If you can go out and get Isaiah Pacheco for, I don't even know, what would he cost? Like a late second, early third right now in Dynasty? Do you think that's where he's at, or do you think that he's a little bit more expensive than that?
He's probably a little bit more expensive than that just because of the nature of redraft season and everything there, the ADP that he held. I'll go down with the ship though. I think you have to factor in that I think when they put together the game plan, Xavier Worthy was going to touch the ball like 12 to 15 times, I think. And then when he went out right away on that first drive, I think they were just lost on
Yeah.
where to go with that. And
And
so
they said, all right, we're giving the ball to Hollywood Brown 16 times.
yeah, they were going to throw 3
I don't
yard
think that was
passes
a
to
game
Hollywood
plan.
Brown, and I guess Juju Smith-Schuster's out here doing something too. And I do wonder though if they'll kind of reset off of this and then say like Pacheco's way more dynamic than Kareem Hunt, and we kind of need to lean on our dynamic playmakers if Worthy and Rashee Rice are out of the lineup right now. And again, it goes back to kind of talking about earlier. Sometimes what you see in week 1 changes into week 2 because necessity changes it.
And this will be one that I'll be watching very, very closely in week 2. Another one I'll be watching closely, the New England Patriots. Actually, before the Patriots, I'm going to sneak another one in here that didn't make your article, but I assume this is where the Minnesota backfield would fall, right?
Yeah.
Like this is as close to a 50-50 split as possible. We saw Aaron Jones with a slight edge in targets, Jordan Mason with the slight edge in carries. But I got to give it to Jordan Mason, man. He looked really, really, really good, just running hard, plowing through defenders. And we talked about this being a stout Chicago defense. It didn't matter. Like Jordan Mason looked really good. So conversely, we saw Aaron Jones doing Aaron Jones things like running wheel routes, catching the ball deep downfield on that touchdown. But not only the touchdown catch, he had another deep reception down the sideline as well. So this one to me seems like very, very obvious what we're going to be looking at. Jordan Mason is going to be slamming between the tackles, and Aaron Jones is going to be getting out in space and doing Aaron Jones things. This is one where I see both of these running backs in what looked like a pretty darn good Vikings offense. I think both of them have a lot of value in fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the evolving of the Detroit backfield. I feel like with Mason kind of being in that David Montgomery role and having Aaron Jones in the Jahmyr Gibbs role a little bit. But I think that you can be comfortable playing either of these guys. PPR probably give a lean to Aaron Jones, but if you need to go with a running back too, if you're in a zero running back build or something like that, I mean, I think either of them are fine.
On to the New England Patriots, and this was one that we kind of expected a committee approach just because of Josh McDaniels' tendencies. Travion Henderson had 47% of the rushes. Carries, touches. I'm sorry, 48% of the touches went to Ramondre Stevenson. I got there eventually.
Opportunities. It's
opportunities. All right,
target
opportunity share. Sorry, this is my first time using Jeff's article as the show sheet, so thanks for bearing with me. 48% of the opportunities went Travion Henderson's way, 43% went Ramondre Stevenson's way, and then this pesky little 9% that was sprinkled to Antonio Gibson. But what we did see is that Travion Henderson, kind of as expected, had twice as many targets, was much more involved as a pass catcher. So again, we just talked about another backfield with Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. This one feels kind of similar, where we're going to see Ramondre Stevenson doing a lot of the between the tackles stuff. Travion Henderson, much more involved in the passing game. Is this another one where you think that both guys could be fantasy relevant? Or do you think that this Ramondre Stevenson usage is more short-term as they get Travion Henderson, their exciting new rookie, fully up to speed?
I mean, he dominated snap share. It was more like 65 to 35% in snap share between the two backs. And so I think that if you're in a pinch, yeah, you can play Ramondre Stevenson. I think you're still touchdown dependent there when it comes down to it. I mean, 7 rushes for 15 yards. They couldn't really get anything working on the ground game. You're excited about Travion Henderson getting 6 targets. I'm very skeptical that we're going to see like the 20 touch games from Travion Henderson, just given the nature of. Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, James White had some fantastic PPR seasons, and so I think Henderson can be that and more. And
I think Gibbs is kind of like the best case scenario here is that, like, even in a split backfield, just so many explosive plays, so many touchdowns, so many targets that even getting like 50% of the touches, he can be an elite RB1.
We just have a very long history of Josh McDaniels offenses when it comes to backfields and having the Ben Jarvis Green Ellis role and then having the Shane Vereen role. And I think that I just don't know that Josh McDaniels doesn't strike me as the type of guy that is saying like, I need to be pretty inventive on this, or I need to switch how I do things and do it for Travion Henderson. He strikes me a little bit more as like, I have the answers. I know this is my system. Yeah. I've got the answers. I know what I'm doing. And it doesn't matter that I've been fired 18 times. I know what I'm doing.
These guys in Foxborough still like me, so I can do whatever I want because I've always got my safety net over there. Yeah. Pittsburgh. Oh boy. This is going to be an interesting one to talk about. Jaylen Warren, 50% or 52% of the opportunities. Kenneth Gainwell, 44% of the opportunities. And a meager 1% went to Caleb Johnson. Jeff, we were kind of on this, that Caleb Johnson, everything we were hearing throughout training camp was not great. And we also talked often about how Aaron Rodgers, soon to be 42 years old, really needs guys that can be in that backfield as pass blockers to help keep him upright and keep his jersey clean. And that seemed to be a huge problem for Caleb Johnson. We heard about the drop passes. We heard about the struggles in pass protection. Meanwhile, Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, both fantastic pass blockers. And we did a show right before the season kicked off, talking about like our deep sleepers. And I talked about Kenneth Gainwell, who I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say he was like RB 140 something on Keep Trade Cut. I mean, just absolutely free in leagues out there, and 7 rushes, 4 targets. This looks like it's probably going to be a split backfield between Warren and Gainwell. So I think this is the Dynasty show, so we're going to keep it Dynasty focused. In shallow redraft leagues, I'm just flat out dropping Caleb Johnson at this point. In Dynasty, I don't think you could do that yet, but panic bells are starting to sound a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, you're not dropping Caleb Johnson in deep dynasty. I think um, the pivot probably would have been a couple weeks ago when these reports kind of emerged to flip him for Quinshad Judkins or like something like that. Probably would have been the proper pivot, but now we're a couple weeks behind that, and Quinshad Judkins has signed a contract, so we know he's going to be a Brown, and so that window's closed a little bit. I think the biggest thing, and it's one of the things that I've talked about previously on the show, is that offense is a lot more pass heavy than what the expectation was on that. And I think a lot of people looked at the way Arthur Smith conducted an offense with Derrick Henry and with Bijan Robinson and just applied it to Caleb Johnson and said, it
Also
doesn't
with
matter.
Ryan Tannehill and Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ritter. Yeah.
Right. And I said on that, yes, I hear you. But if you look at the 1 year that he had Matt Ryan and he had Cordero Patterson in the backfield and he had Mike Davis in the backfield, they were top 5-ish in expected pass rate or pass rate over expectation. They were a very pass heavy offense then. And I think Aaron Rodgers coming in there, Aaron Rodgers is going to make sure that it was a very pass heavy offense before he signed that contract. And I think that Arthur Smith is, for all the flack that Arthur Smith gets, and I know that I've given him our flack as well, he is adaptable to his personnel. And I think that that's one of the things that you want to see out of an offensive coordinator. And
I got
boiling
so
that
much
down
for saying that Arthur Smith is a good offensive coordinator. I think that he probably wasn't ready for the limelight of a head coaching job, but yeah, like he is good at tailoring his offense to the personnel that he has and maximizing the skill sets around him. And that's exactly what he's doing right now in Pittsburgh. Like that offense looked good. Like Aaron Rodgers, after not doing a whole lot the last 2 years, just coming out and throwing for 4 touchdowns in his debut with like not a great supporting cast. That tells me a lot about what they're cooking in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and that leads into having Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell as the backs. I mean, that it's the type of thing of you hear the reports and you struggle to conceptualize it because, yeah, the thought is like Caleb Johnson's this big bruising running back, and he had Derrick Henry. What do you mean? Like, what? Why would it be Kenneth Gainwell? And then you see the product on the field, and you're like, oh, I understand now. Like, this is a pass heavy offense, and you're going to have these two veteran backs that are very good in the pass game, and just I think this is the Chargers did it in prime time and got everybody's attention then, but I think that this is one where there should be a significant adjustment on many of the projection sets that are being run on this Pittsburgh offense.
So I really nerded out a few weeks ago. Remember when Anthony Richardson got hurt on that preseason play where he just got like blown up by an untouched, unabated rusher? I really nerded out after that play, and I went back and I started watching film from 2022, seeing like how Shane Steichen was calling protection with the backfield there, and Kenneth Gainwell was on that team. And what I did is I sat down at my computer for about an hour watching Kenneth Gainwell pass pro snaps. And I was blown away. I'm like, I never realized like this guy's one of the best pass blocking running backs in the league. So it makes sense now with an old Aaron Rodgers out there that he's going to have that role. 2 more to talk about here. And goodness, I mean, this we really buried the lead on this show, saving like the best for last because I think these are the backfields that people really want to know, like what the heck is going on here. Seattle Seahawks, Zach Charbonnet. We're calling it a committee back right now, but Zach Charbonnet had the lead. The lead in snaps, I should say. Ken Walker made up for it by seeing an extra targets, but Charbonnet, even on the first drive, like we saw a 6-2 favor. Or 6-2 touch count in favor of Zach Charbonnet on that opening drive, who also plunged in for the touchdown as well. I don't know what's happening here. I know that Clint Kubiak does run this wide zone run scheme, and that's what we saw Zach Charbonnet really thrive in when he was at UCLA. I also see a very physical, big-bodied San Francisco defense, and I think that Zach Charbonnet is a good counter to that. Also, Kenneth Walker dealing with this preseason injury that could be limiting him a little bit. There are so many factors in play here, but I have long said that Zach Charbonnet is a very underrated running back and deserves a bigger role. And we might just see some sort of split like this for the remainder of the season. What are your thoughts here, Jeff?
How long is Ken Walker going to be a Seattle Seahawk? Probably is part of my
Or
thought
is
there,
this
but
like a showcasing Zach Charbonnet to try to trade him? Like it could go either way, right?
it could go either way. I tend to think I'm completely with you on what's the takeaway here, because I do think that yes, Walker was dealing with the injury, and Walker probably is not 100% yet. And I think that they got into this game against San Francisco. I was reading a story about after the game, one of the linebackers for San Francisco's like blood was just like rushing down his face, like in the locker room. Basically, it was like the type of thing where it was just a very physical game going up against these two division rivals. And I think the Seahawks, they want to play very physical. And when you run into a team like the 49ers that is a division rival, they're going to want to match that physicality. And so that's going to lead into probably a Zach Charbonnet type of a game. But you might get into some games where you're playing a team that's able to spread you out and maybe like a Baltimore or something like that. And you need to have a little bit of firepower to be able to keep up with it. And maybe that plays into Ken Walker more. I mean, that's the nightmare of it all, is that it's both, but also you don't know which one to play.
Yeah.
So that's the bad potential one.
Yeah, I mean, this is another tough one to get a read on. They did get swallowed up by the San Francisco 49ers, but this is one like if we're going to see this 50-50 split in what we know is like a proven good run scheme with two talented running backs, I feel like there are some matchups where similar to Minnesota and similar to what we were saying about New England, like you could just fire both of these guys up. I don't think we're going to see a lot of like just horrendously bad weeks. I think we might have kind of seen the floor in this game against a good defense where Kenneth Walker was banged up. I think this is one where, it's going to cap both of their upside as long as both are healthy. But I think there's going to be enough efficiency and enough volume that both of these guys now kind of fall into flex consideration rather than what we've seen over the last couple of years where it has just been the Kenneth Walker show and Zach Charbonnet sitting on ice waiting for that opportunity to open up.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Last one to talk about here, Jeff. Washington Commanders, and this is another one that maybe we didn't have the best preseason read on. I feel like I'm eating a little bit of crow here on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, graded as PFF's number one running back on the week. Now, a lot of that was skewed by a late game big gainer that he was able to rip off here after Austin Eckler was hurt and they were up big. But can't deny it, he saw 46% of the opportunities. Austin Eckler saw 37%, and then we saw a little sprinkle of Jeremy McNichols. So what are we doing now? Is it time to just eat crow and say trade your first round picks for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt?
So Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had a better game than Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry.
That's what PFF is saying. Yeah, because he had a 45-yard rush in the fourth quarter.
Interesting.
I do think PFF. I mean, I was a little tongue in cheek with, but he actually was graded as the best rusher. Yeah, I don't know how you could see. Well, Derrick Henry did have a fumble.
Well, he did have a fumble. You're right. He did have a fumble.
So I imagine that the Baltimore Ravens, if they could trade Derrick Henry for Krosky-Merritt, like they do it, right? He's got the better PFF grade after all.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we pushed on exercising caution on this backfield, on the hype that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was hitting, because I do think it got to a point where people were thrilled about the acquisition price that they paid on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt and were taking their victory laps, and then the ADP just got out of control a little bit, and I don't know that they're the same people that were victory lapping it were backing it up in ranks and with the ADP when they were in those actionable situations. And so I feel like that was my pushback a little bit more and less on the player himself. And you got to recognize that this situation, he's already has the rushing portion of this committee. We see Austin Eckler dealing with an injury. I mean, I still hesitate we haven't seen Cliff Kingsbury go there with a lead back. Cliff Kingsbury has traditionally been a little bit more of a run back and a pass back type of a committee. But if Austin Eckler's out of the lineup, I mean, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt could be the feature back as soon as Thursday night. And if he runs with that, it could be all everything's off and they're just going with it. But yeah, I mean, it is a situation where the game was over. They were running the ball out. He saw minimal usage in the passing game. We do know Deebo Samuel and Jaden Daniels, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, the lead back in a offense with Jaden Daniels as quarterback is going to be pretty good for fantasy. And so good on you if you've got Corey Krosky Merritt on really regardless of whatever price you paid to have him.
Yeah, and while we're owning up to our misses, I got to say Deebo Samuel, when he's not dealing with pneumonia in the preseason, looks pretty darn good. Hoping he can stay healthy because he looked absolutely fantastic on Sunday. Good to see him back to his old self. But with Corey Krosky Merritt, the production is going to be there, or the volume should be there. It is worth noting Austin Eckler got banged up with a shoulder injury, and that's why he was out at the end of the game. But yeah, Jacory Krosky Merritt had a touchdown. He had a big run as well. From a dynasty lens, I don't really know what to say or do yet. I think that this is still, the whole story hasn't been told, but I do see an aging day 3 running back. And what I see with that is a lot of red flags. James Robinson and Jordan Howard. And we've seen these guys kind of just get relied on for 1 year and then kind of thrown out the window. And that's the end of their career. And of course, we have seen also the Aaron Joneses and what Chase Brown is doing right now and Kyron Williams. Like, there are guys that defy the odds as well. I think I need to see a bigger sample size before I'm willing to completely buy in yet. And the problem is, I think he's a good player. Jeff, I know you think he is a good player too. It's just that the market has swung so aggressively pro Jacory Krosky Merritt that I can't give an early 2026 second round pick to get him. I just think that he's overvalued. So I think if you've got him, congratulations, because that's found money. You probably got him off the waiver wire or in round 5 year rookie draft. And I think at this point, if you could sell him for an early second, I'd still recommend doing that. I'm definitely not buying at that cost. I would sell at that cost. But also, if you just want to say, hey, Dave, I think you're an idiot, I'm going to hold this guy and ride him till the wheels fall off, I think that's a perfectly normal thing to do as well. So, well, I might be a little bit more cautious with these day 3 running backs. I do see the upside, especially for this season.
And now that we're 90 minutes into this show, I'm just going, it's not the market that I had the problem with on Jacory Krosky Merritt. It was the to the moon, but also he's my running back 45. And
Right.
Also I'm gonna dunk on you on Twitter if you traded a first for Jacory Krosky Merritt. That's where my just pushback on the whole situation was on just the race to claim that you're first, and just the
first and the highest. Yeah,
first in the high. Well, but it's not even the highest, because
right.
you had the people that were celebrating being first and everything else. Meanwhile, Jacory Krosky Merritt's my running back 52.
Right.
That's where it's not the market. It's the
and I think there's also the added
market.
Yeah, there's also the added lack of context is that I feel like this happens so often. I don't know, for lack of a better term, casual fantasy football players. Just think about your redraft guy who follows a handful of fantasy football analysts because he wants an edge and he wants to beat his coworkers in an office league. That guy plugs in mid-August, and he sees Jacory Krosky Merritt to the moon, and he's saying, oh, I should draft this guy in round 6. And the same thing happened a few years ago with Bryan Edwards, and a couple of years ago with Darwin Thompson. These guys get almost irresponsibly pushed up where all of the nuance is gone. And I think that's where our major pushback was, is okay, yes, this guy, he is a fun player and the opportunity is there, but we literally saw him going round 6 in redraft leagues because of all of the people that were just so excited about the found money in their dynasty leagues.
Bingo. And I mean, this is personal to some level for us, because we both experienced the Bryan Edwards situation where we were both new into fantasy Twitter. And when you get into that, you're like, oh my God, I've found this amazing network of resources that my league mates don't have. And these guys are all on Bryan Edwards, and my league mates don't even know about this guy. And then
Quintez Cephas was the same offseason. Yes.
Quintez Cephas was a similar situation. Darwin Thompson, Laviska Shenault was a similar situation. And so that's where the frustration lies in it. It just feels irresponsible because the other side of it is the same conversation on the found money celebration to the moon, but also I'm going to make fun of this guy that gave up a first for him in his dynasty league. And I'm going to dunk on this where I saw him go in the 6th round on this. And that's where it all comes down to feeling irresponsible to me when it comes to these players. And you mention it in context, and it's tough. It's so hard. It's so hard to just the way the nature of the social media beast is. You only have so many characters. You're trying to get your message across. It's fine to be excited. It's awesome to be excited about. I know for me, I have Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in leagues where I got him after the rookie draft. I'm excited. That's great. But at the same time, I need to weigh that against providing context on, I'm not saying go trade a 1st round pick for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. Like, I'm excited about this situation. And so that's where the frustration lies, because again, we have been on the other side and we have invested in Bryan Edwards and been like, yes, I've got this up on my league mates, and you're just wrong. And sometimes it's right. And when it is right, it's Puka Nacua, and that's the best thing in the world. That's the best feeling in the world when it's right. And the worst feeling is you went into your auction with your home league buddies and you had Bryan Edwards and Laviska Shenault and Darwin Thompson, and that's your bench and that was your budget, and you are sunk on, and because of you bought into the dynasty brain rot.
Yeah. And it's tough. And that's why I like doing the show with you so much, Jeff, because we can like dig into these nuanced discussions and we can have these talks, because Twitter, like I've got a big following on Twitter. I like to think I'm pretty good on Twitter, but like still I all the time, like I'll say something and it's just like, you guys are like reading not what I said. Like it's just being taken in the complete wrong way. And like all context and nuance gets lost. For example, we talked about it pre-show. Like I had a tweet today where there was a Caleb Williams play that like, everybody is saying that he sailed it. And I said, you know what? I don't think he sailed it. I think the throw was fine. Like he threw it to a spot where only DJ Moore can get the ball. Had he tried throwing it in a different direction, it could have been intercepted, all this stuff. But me saying this throw was fine, people read that as this was a great throw that was over DJ Moore's head. And like the context and nuance that gets lost when you're limited to 280 characters and people are just scrolling on their phone while they're sitting on the toilet, it gets really, really difficult. So I think this Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt conversation needed to happen because like we had some tongue-in-cheek jokes and, I was memeing on Twitter as well, as were you. But there's a lot more to it than just like, I don't ever think that I was like anti-Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I just think that the entire industry got a little bit over their skis and a little bit irresponsible with their touting of him. But that being said, if you found him, congratulations, because I think that you're looking at somebody who could be, an RB2, potentially even like a low end RB1 if this Commanders team ends up being good and he can steal the role from Austin Eckler. So I don't know what those 12 minutes on Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt.
And if you're a longtime listener to the show and you were plugged in January, you were the one that found him in your league. Like you're the one that's got him. And we should be celebrating that. Like that's
right.
awesome. Like, that's so cool. It is so cool that like when we were putting together the rookie guide, I was watching tape of the running backs and I was like, this guy.
I remember you texting me and saying like, I can't believe Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt didn't get a combine invite.
Yeah, I was devastated that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt didn't get a combine invite. I was so disappointed because it was one that I feel like when I'm going to, and now Dave, how the sausage is made. You contributed to the rookie guide this year, but when like I'm just watching these guys over and over again, and you just get to a layer where you're just watching guys over and over again. You just know they are not NFL players and that like, this isn't going to matter. But then it's the meme of the guy that is like sits up on the couch, like that meme. I feel like you get to some of those players and I'll get a handful a year that they do that. And Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was my biggest one this year where I was like, okay, we have something here after the slog of Donovan Edwards and all these other guys that, everything has to go right for them to do anything.
Yeah, it does. Once you're down to like the RB60, RB70 in the rookie guide, it kind of loses its fun. Well, on that note, Jeff, we went a little lengthy today, an hour and 45 minutes just talking about backfields and whatever else kind of came to our mind. But this is what happens when we get a week off. We get excited and we talk about a lot of stuff. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode with Jeff Bell and I. We should have started off the show kind of with our programming so everybody can know what to expect in season. But we're doing this episode where we're going to focus on usage and trends and changes and kind of how these backfields are looking. As we know, it's a very mercurial and volatile position. We want to help you stay ahead of the curve there. Tomorrow, tomorrow, what we're going to be doing is coming out with a weekly episode where we talk about the biggest risers and fallers. I'm doing a new series here at Football Guys focusing on rest of season rankings. So we've got a little bit of a dynasty spin on that, where we're going to be looking at the biggest risers and fallers from week to week, talking about whether we're buying into it, whether we aren't, whether we should panic, what exactly is happening there. And then last year, we did an audio only series that was injuries, news, and notes, where we would go through every single matchup, previewing the matchups, talking about the injuries, talking about our outlooks for those games. Well, that was audio only last year. That's now going to be on YouTube as well on Friday afternoon. So be sure to tune in for that. So 3 shows a week talking about usage, risers and fallers, and then matchup previews as well, with a little focus on injuries. So thank you so much to everybody who's tuned in throughout this offseason. Thank you to everybody who's here after week 1. We've got a long season ahead of us, and we are looking very forward to it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you tomorrow.